Welcome back, everyone, to Joe Salcedo Media Podcast on this wonderful Sunday evening here in the Visual Arts Center. This podcast is in collaboration with Eckerd College and our Media Ethics class, and today we have a very special guest tuning in. It is my best friend, as well as also personal Reddit self-proclaimed connoisseur, Andrew Wynn. How are you today?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Good stuff, good stuff. So, now, Andrew, the reason why I brought you in today is we're going to talk all about censorship and the social media platform Reddit and sort of how those two go together, the ethics behind it, all that good stuff. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Reddit is and what is going on here with the issue of censorship and Reddit itself?
Yeah, certainly. So Reddit is definitely a wild place. Oftentimes it's kind of seen as this like wild west of the internet where people can kind of do whatever they want. It's not totally reined in on yet, not totally understood. And honestly, it's kind of ironic. They call themselves the front page of the internet. But in essence, Reddit is a social media platform that it's made up of communities called subreddits, or shortened to subs. And the platform is notable because these subs are generally allowed to make whatever rules they want for their small community. And as a whole, that's going to be the only sense of governing they have. So let's say, like, for instance, I love Harry Potter. So if I'm really interested in Harry Potter things, I could join r/Harry Potter. And that would give me general info, any news or updates on the topic. Or I could get far more specific into the communities I want to see. So I could be like, oh, I want Harry Potter fan theory. Okay, so r/Harry Potter fan theory. Or memes or artwork or even pornography. Right.
Wow.
So there's loads of content on Reddit that you just can... You join these communities, and you find people that are very interested in the same type of stuff. Most of Reddit's existence, the only exceptions to this would be illegal content. And so this model allows for just as much like troll and toxic content as it does for like very beneficial communities that they, I think, originally aimed for. It's worth noting that the way Reddit does their user basis, right? So every time when you log into Reddit, you set up an account and you get like a username or a screen name. And the kicker is nobody expects your Reddit account to be linked to your actual real life person in any way.
Right.
Whereas on Instagram or Facebook, if you have an account, you don't have any info, your name is something weird, you don't have any pictures, everybody would be like, okay, this is kind of some kind of lurky account, it's a little odd. On Reddit, that's the norm. So it gives this sense of pseudo-anonymity that almost detaches the person from the user. It kind of dehumanizes the individuals, and you just boil them down to this internet persona.
Like it kind of separates them, like a lot of times, like on Instagram, like you'll have your in-person personality and then your social media personality, and sort of removing your personal identity gives you sort of that anonymity to be able to do that.
Certainly.
Interesting.
And so this, honestly, is really interesting, right? So I've seen personally in my experiences on Reddit some incredible acts of kindness, love, support, and helpfulness that are really cool. It's stuff I don't see on Facebook. It's stuff I don't see on Instagram. It's really helpful place to be. But just as much as I've seen that, I've seen horribly toxic and divisive content. And that type of thing is really alarming because that's when you get into this sense of anonymity, allowing for people to do that. And not really having a negative effect on them. The way that Reddit kind of keeps their like community in check is using this karma system, right? So when you post a comment or like a new thread or something, you would get upvotes and downvotes from those who read it. If I like something, I would upvote it. If I dislike it, I would downvote it. Obviously, you can do nothing and just remain neutral. It doesn't, have any effect. But the upvotes and downvotes will occur as credit or karma on your account.
Okay.
And so this karma is like a score that your account holds, and the higher your karma, the more things you've posted and the more times people have enjoyed your content, which is really good for awesome and positive content, and then obviously also some negative content. But the kicker is when so much of the community is enjoying this potentially troll or toxic content, you will see that even when somebody posts something divisive or harmful, it might still get upvoted if it's considered funny or otherwise entertaining. Yeah, so you'll see a large percent of the community is like, oh my gosh, that was so good. Like, I don't care that you hurt that one person or those feelings or whatever it was. That was funny. It was worth it. Upvotes.
Yeah.
And so it almost promotes this this toxic community that it just allows them to be completely open about that.
Right. So that's interesting. So in a sense, when you take a look at Instagram and Facebook, like the Instagram likes, like the only option you have is to like it, to give it love.
Bingo.
Unless if you go in the comments and say, which that's a whole nother conversation. But so with Reddit, you could have such a terrible post and people can actually like that and give the person that posted it karma, almost like good credit. So it's almost taking sort of the like and sort of the feedback off of the company and into the community.
As of lately, it's been almost an entirely unfettered community. People are allowed to do whatever they want and just open things up entirely. So they have a history of not censoring any content. Before this past year, it's like a dozen or 2 dozen total subs that have ever been banned from Reddit. Summer of 2020, Reddit actually rewrote their user term of agreement to include a line that restricted, quote, content that promoted hate based on identity or vulnerability. And that was a big step for Reddit because immediately following this change, they banned some 2,000 subreddits, which again, you went from a dozen or 2 dozen subs that had ever been banned to now you're up to 2,000 plus.
And that was in one day
in one
when
day,
they changed their terms of service. That's
Bingo.
quite a big change. That's huge. I mean, that's a massive jump. And like, you know, it kind of sets you up for a really good Box analysis where, you know, where does Reddit fall on this and how are they allowed to sort of change those terms of service and what are the ethics in, you know, changing something so quick and kind of, you know, just sort of almost changing the rules in a sense while also trying to balance sort of that, you know, public safety in a way. I mean, a Box method is great to do with these ethical dilemmas. You know, it kind of like helps just to go through and sort of analyze it from both sides without inserting
Certainly.
any personal judgment. So do you mind if we just go through some of the boxes of
Let's
that?
rock it. Yeah, let's go.
Cool. Okay. So the next thing that we would want to analyze within this situation that you just explained is the values, and specifically sort of like the values of Reddit's, the values of the users, as well as also their corporate image. I mean, as you mentioned, one of sort of the beautiful things about Reddit is it gives people a chance to share their opinion without having any type of sort of flashback in a sense. Now, I mean, that goes very well with sort of this idea of free speech. You know,
Certainly.
people should be allowed to be able to go onto forums and to meet like-minded individuals and just share their opinion without having to worry about any sort of, you know, negative feedback. What is this balance between sort of leaving the public to do what they want as well as also developing sort of the framework to make sure people do it ethically?
So Reddit as a whole is seen as this great place for people to be able to find communities of like-minded individuals. Small or niche groups can get together and share things openly and really just come with these really small shared interests that I think a lot of people might not have in their real life. That is a super, super valuable thing.
And I think that's you know, people should be entitled and people should be able to have that freedom for whatever interest they may have to be able to find other people and sort of feel that sense of community. I know that's something that sometimes can be a struggle with social media is, you know, relating to people and sort of feeling like we're all together. Some of the values, you know, to make sure that everyone can do that, you know, without making sure people get hurt in the process. You know, if you talk about some of the values, you know, going way back to Aristotle's golden mean, you know, and that's essentially keeping a middle ground between censorship and allowance of offensive content.
Right.
You know, when you follow Aristotle's line of thought, he suggests that censorship shouldn't be considered offensive, but rather as a mean of compromise. You know, these moderators on Reddit that go through and take a look at the content and upvote what they think is interesting is almost like a sense of duty, in a sense. A lot of people, when they think of moderators as, you know, oh, these people who, you know, they want to take down the community and dictate what we see and things like that, but rather almost treating them as people of compromise and people of equilibrium to make sure that everyone gets good quality content.
We're looking at freedom on a spectrum to be shown like you don't have unlimited freedom, but we're not under like totalitarian regime where you can't say anything freely, right? So where is that middle ground in various communities and in this specific instance of Reddit? But that's a really, really good point to bring up. I think another really great like value system we could be looking at is this Judeo-Christian idea of like persons as an end, following like this love your neighbor kind of concept. You see that this ethical like stance really pulls together the idea of holding respect for people and loving them as individuals. And that's really important on Reddit because I see that you will oftentimes, as I mentioned before, like almost dehumanize people and turn them simply into their screen name or whatever their avatar is on Reddit.
Right.
So it really holds this idea of like boiling people down of not just their avatar, not just their username, but there's a person on the other side of that, and you need to recognize
human
that.
being with feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah. And whether or not you know them individually, whether or not you know them as a person, like you know, going back to Judeo-Christian values, like respect this person as a human being, give them your general human values, and just remember that, their opinion is coming from a human.
Bingo. And it's not to say that you need to say that they're right or you need to agree with them, but simply just to allow them a place to understand, like, this is my thoughts, and I want to share them respectfully, so long as that's the environment that they're in. Moving forward, I do believe that the next section would be loyalties, right? So I think we have a couple loyalties that we really need to talk about. And the first is going to be to the users, right? Reddit can't function without its users. You need to have people who find themselves in this sense of community that makes them happy, that makes them welcome, they enjoy the time they spend there. Otherwise, no one's going to use Reddit, right? And
Right.
At the end of the day, Reddit wants people to use Reddit.
That way they can survive.
Exactly. Like, they need that traffic. They need that info. And honestly, I think the priorities for the users are going to be being able to post content, being able to share content, right? So if you just go and censor like everything off of Reddit, you're going to have a bunch of really angry users on your hands because they're going to be very concerned about not having a place to share all this stuff that they really want to. So I think that's your first one. Moving forward, you definitely need to see like Reddit as like a corporate image, right? So what they withhold on their own, what their actions as a corporation say about them,
Yes.
the influence they have, a lot of people looking at them. And then finally, you definitely see this idea of like social standards of censorship and freedom, right?
Right.
So Reddit being this wild west of the internet, if you open it up to say, we are now closing X amount of things. If you talk about this, you're out. If you do this, you're out. It's no longer this unfettered, uncensored, open internet space that people really think of it as.
Definitely, I agree. And I like how you sort of, you went from small scale to large scale. Like, you have your individual users, which of course there's millions upon millions of them, and
Certainly.
they're all loyal to Reddit, and they all want to be loyal, so they have access to that community.
Certainly.
Then you have Reddit as a corporation. Reddit is a corporation with a brand, and they want to make sure that their brand is represented in a strong, good way instead of in a negative way. And then even, you talk about just overall, like the societal standards of censorship and freedom, which I think even currently right now in this current time period, we're facing unique challenges of, who can you ban and what should you ban them for? I mean, even think about the president. The president got banned on Twitter for some of the comments and things he was saying. And what is the ethics in a social media company banning these big top political speakers, And for what reason? And sort of recognizing like, okay, these standards, these overall morals that people should have to make sure that the internet can be mostly free and also a good experience for as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points there, right? And especially with, as we've seen mass bannings of people of many types in the past few months, just due to some interesting climates we've been dealing with, you definitely need to take these things into account.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess that kind of brings us to the end of our analysis. And just kind of using these trains of thought, taking into consideration these different viewpoints. Do you think Reddit was justified in their actions to ban over 2,000 subreddits and also almost, dissipate those millions upon millions of users that were in those specific subreddits? Do you think that they have the moral authority? And do you think anything should have been changed from that?
I really do think that what Reddit did is in alignment with these ethical lenses that we pulled through. And then personally, I also think that, Reddit, in terms of, the r/alt-right ban in 2017, definitely justified. When you have an
Agreed.
entire group of people looking to negatively impact one person's life, very much understand why that's banned, why that's dissipated, and why it's not allowed.
Right.
The some 2,000 bans that were then, subsequently done with their new terms of service, I think that's where you get a little more sticky, right? Because I can look at through 2,000 bans, and we need to see, here are the issues.
They're all individual. That's
right.
the biggest
But,
thing.
So at the core, the reason those people were banned were because of this idea that they were endangering or harming individuals based on a sense of identity or vulnerability. And at its core, I think there's no business for that on the internet anywhere.
Right.
And I think it was honestly a really good thing that happened. But again, I don't know. I wasn't a part of those 2,000 subs, so I don't know what the daily life looked like in there. And whether each one was justified is just a very broad question.
Right. And definitely just to play the devil's advocate, I mean, I personally agree with everything that you said. I do think Reddit was justified in their cancellation of these subreddits. But also, I mean, one of the biggest things that we talked about was giving these people a sense of community. And now communities can be bad, but communities can also be good. So in these 2,000 subreddits, most likely, what if there were a couple people that were trying to make change? I mean, the biggest thing to make change is you have to go into those groups and you have to
Certainly.
talk to those people who may have their preconceived notion, and you have to get involved and you have to open up that conversation. So it's almost like banning these subreddits is completely just taking away the conversation completely
Yeah.
off the internet. Now, as I said before, I do think with the current climate and everything that happened, yes, Reddit was justified to do what they did in order to protect people. But in the future, I mean, if you think about it, like, what if Reddit starts to ban certain things that they don't like or certain things that don't go in line with their corporate policy? Like, let's say, I don't know, let's say simple and innocent enough. Somebody is talking about monkeys climbing trees or something.
Right.
And for whatever reason, a Reddit executive doesn't like that. So they go ahead and ban it.
I think really that leaves us with some really big thoughts here of like how far can this censorship go, and what's to stop them in the future from writing new terms of service that say you can't talk about monkeys climbing in trees, and then you
Right.
can't talk about NASCAR, and then you can't talk about podcasts, and then
Uh-huh.
it just snowballs, right? So I think that's a big concern that people hold, especially in media censorship, and I think to that we really we have to take it as it comes. We
Right.
need to decide as a society what's appropriate to be shared and what's not. And I think that's where you see a lot of disagreement coming out today.
Great. Sounds great. Well, that brings us to the end of our conversation. Once again, I'd like to give Andrew a big thank you for coming on and sharing his awesome knowledge. We have our Reddit connoisseur over here. He actually helped me sign up for my account, and I've been going through and taking a look at all of the different things on all different spectrums. And I mean, it's kind of a black hole. But thank you, though. I'm sure I'll be able to learn some
It's
awesome
been a
stuff.
pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate your viewership, and stay tuned for more podcasts like this to come. We'll see you on the next podcast.